Hello, welcome back to Hockey with My Friends. Starting up season number 2. Uh, Toronto won the championship last season, so they're defending their championship, and the other teams are definitely chasing the design that Toronto has established for walking through the regular season and the playoffs. They just annihilated everybody with only a few scattered losses here and there. So right off the bat, we're just going to jump right into it. Team Vancouver versus Toronto. It's looking like Vancouver has just a middle of the road offense, half decent defense, and mediocre goaltending. So they're going to be in really tough against Toronto here. So they're just going to field their best possible lineup with one bruiser in there just to try and establish. And they got a franchise player of number 2, Sasquatch there. That's going to hurt their lineup. And Toronto is looking like they just have the most amazing forward group. They have so much strength up front, and they're just going to field their top lineup. Brain Leach is a 10, but he has weaknesses to other cards that have modifiers. And they're going to go with a solid D and their goalie. Fencer's not bad, but he also has a weakness against other cards with modifiers. So here we go. Let's start off. First set of cards. Sasquatch versus Octoshot, and Vancouver just takes it on the chin right off the bat. Second set of cards. The Save versus Grant Fury, so no goals there, so still 1-0 Toronto. Next set of cards being flipped over, the defense, and math confuse you. Nobody can score against him unless they're elites, so that's another no goal for either team. Over the halfway point of the game here. Eager Beaver versus Jack Actor. Eager Beaver pops one in, so ties the game up, but it looks like Toronto's strongest guys are still yet to come, and there we go. There's another goal for Toronto. Goal Hog pops one in against Nate and McCannon, and there you go. There's a little bit of bruising, some retaliation by Skeleton, and he takes out the Rocket, but that gives a 3-1 victory for Toronto, but losing one of their top forward groups right off the bat. So Vancouver's quite pleased with themselves with the loss, but you got to slowly wear down the opposing teams. And a loss for them and a win for them. And since no other players got gooned, Toronto gets first pick of the draft here. And they replace an 8 with a 5, the Golden Oldie. And he will only play in the regular season. He retires at the playoffs unless you pick him up during the playoffs. So Vancouver takes a loss, but gives a little bit of a dent in the armor to Toronto there. So that will come into play later in the season, I think, if they keep knocking them down here. So Calgary versus Edmonton here. Calgary has a mediocre lineup through and through. They're going to play one of their bruisers. They're going to play their top goaltender because Edmonton has no bruisers. So they can safely play all their other top players. And they don't have any franchise players, so they can just pick and choose exactly what they want. Oh, and I have all the special cards turned up, but that's okay. Edmonton, since Calgary has one bruiser, they'll play some of their anti-bruising guys here. And they might play a little bit of a safe lineup here. And For some reason, they have got too many forwards, not enough goaltenders. Well, that's going to punish them. They have to fix that when the draft comes around here. And they'll play their best defense. Well, no, let's play their best defense. Calgary failed to make the playoffs last year, so they definitely want to try and up their level of play here. No goal Ned versus a goaltender, so no goals are scored here. 0-0. Next set of players here. Oh, Ray Pork pops one in versus Fast Freddy. Freddy just wasn't fast enough, so that's 1-0 Calgary. Top Shelf pops one in against a Moose. So 1-1 game now. This could be a pretty good matchup. And no goal for the Milkman versus Cujo. So 1-1 with 2 players left to go here. And still 1-1. A pair of sixes come up against each other. Let's see what happens here with the final flip of the cards. Any bruiser that he plays against. So he bruises Bobby Baton and scores the game-winning goal. So that was not a very good maneuver for Calgary to field Bobby Baton out there versus the Grim Reaper. So Edmonton pulls off the 2-1 win. Calgary still going along with their losing ways. And Calgary gets to draft their replacement player here. Get a 1 bruiser, and what are they going to pull in exchange? 7. Wow, what a lucky circumstance that was, getting one of the best defensemen. Oh, they must have almost the best set of defense in the league right now. Wow. Calgary's pretty happy with that loss then. Establishing themselves with such a stalwart defensive lineup. Oh, and I got to fix these guys' lineup because they got one too many forwards and not enough goaltenders. I don't know how we managed to pull that. So we'll randomly pull one of their forwards out of lineup and then pull the next goaltender for them. And let's go with this one here. Grim Reaper gets pulled out of lineup for a backup goalie. What are we going to pull here for them? Tripinjari, a 4. Not that great, but okay. Next lineup is Toronto versus Calgary. Calgary goes again, and there are no bruisers in Toronto's lineup, so they're both going top flight lineups here. And since they lost one of their best forwards, you're going to have to put in the Brain Leech. And how the heck did Grant Fury get over here? That's not the correct goalie. There we go. And versus Calgary. Calgary's going to go top lineup here. Top forwards, top goalie, top defense. Let's see if Calgary can do what Vancouver did. And oh no, they didn't. Toronto up 1-0 now. Octashot over top of Paul Nabob. And no goal against Math Confused Ooze, because you just have to be an elite to score against this guy. So 1-0 Toronto still. 1-0 Jack Actor can't score against Cujo. Still 1-0. No goal Ned. Still 1-0. Calgary's pulling out the defensive lineup here, just stymieing Toronto. But will that 1-0 be good enough to hold up? Oh, look at this. Ray Pork, first game in, and he scores against Grant Fury. And 1-1 here. We're 2, 4, 5, 2, 4, 5. Calgary's got one too many players in the line. Well, that's their fault. 2-2. Captain Canada comes through right at the end. Oh no, that's 2-1. 2-1 for Calgary. How did they pull in one extra forward? Good thing he didn't play in. Oh, lordy, lordy. 2-1 for Toronto, and another victory for Toronto. No bruises. Looking like Toronto might trounce the league once again. 2 games, 2 wins. Now the next game on the schedule is Vancouver versus Edmonton. Vancouver is going to play their franchise player. Woohoo! Yes, they will. And they have a bruiser, so Edmonton has to watch out here. Calgary took a loss. Toronto took a win. Calgary's already 0-2. That's just absolutely brutal. And Edmonton is going to field their top lineup here. They do have one bruiser on Vancouver, but they're not too worried about it. They got pretty deep lineup. Vancouver would love to win this game here to get off the schneid, and they did pretty good. And they take out Edmonton's top player right there. 1-0 for Edmonton, but down their top gun, top shelf, topped out. And that's evensies because Steve Kariya is +1, so no goal scored there. The milkman just takes it to Sasquatch. He just watches that one go right past him. So 2-1 for Edmonton. 3-1 for Edmonton. Rob the red line just gave it to Nate in his cannon. It's pretty sad state of affairs there, but the save comes up big against Fast Freddy. So that gives Vancouver a chance to pull out a tie here with their last player. What do? Nothing, because he just cannot beat King Richard. Edmonton goes 2-0 to start the season, but loses one of their best players. But sometimes sacrifices have to be made to get those early points to get into the playoff hunt. Wow, 2-0 drubbing. And 1 bruise for Vancouver. Vancouver's already got 2 bruises on the season, so they're leading the tie break versus everybody because they have those bruises, which are so valuable. And top shelf, and 8 goes into the deck, and Edmonton pulls out a 7. These guys are just unbelievable. They did the same thing going through the playoffs last year. They just managed to pull good player after good player after good player. Even though they lost a good player, they'd always replace him with an even better player, which is like unbelievable. Now we got Calgary versus Vancouver. Calgary has, well, this is the battle of losers, so each team is going to field their best lineup because, well, they don't want to be the last remaining team without a victory. So their best defense, their best forwards, and their best goaltender for Calgary. They're going to probably take a bruise from Vancouver, but it's something they got to do to try and get this victory here. Vancouver just hoping that their cards will match up well and steal a victory here, but it's looking pretty sad right now for Vancouver. They got just such a mediocre lineup. And what is this? Bruises any bruiser less than 2. Oh, lucky him, because he's a 2. So no goal scored, and Skullerton gets off lucky, and so does Cujo, doesn't get gooned. And the Moose trains one against the Eager Beaver. He was a little too eager, overplayed the puck, and got paid. Here we go, and the save comes up big again. Always, Vancouver's lucky that they have this guy, because if it wasn't for him, they would be losing so many more games. Only forwards in defense of 1 through 3 can score against no goal Ned. Look at that. Franchise player Sasquatch watches a goal go in for himself. He's so happy. He's elated. Ties the game 1-1. That might be Sasquatch's first goal in the league. Defense. No player with a D in their name can score. Well, Ray Pork doesn't have a D in his name, but he's delighted by popping another one in. 2 goals in 2 games. He's pretty happy, and that's a 2-1 lead for Calgary. Vancouver pulls out Nate McCannon, and Dr. Spruce just blows one past him. Yeah. So Calgary wins the battle of the losers, and there were no bruises in that game, so Vancouver starts off at 0-3. Wow, what a humiliating defeat that was. 3-1 for Calgary. But I mean, the season is still early. There's so much time left to go. Each team has almost played 3 games, so a quarter of the schedule. Next game is Edmonton and Toronto. The 2 top teams right now, both are 2-0, no losses. So this is a pretty important matchup. Toronto's going with their top lineup again, and it's just so surprising how few bruisers are in the league right now. Usually that's how you punish other teams, but Vancouver's the only team that happens to have a bruiser in their lineup right now. And Edmonton's going to try and field their top line of guys here. A couple of 6s on defense. And Mr. USSR is going to slide into the lineup here. So this is a precursor to the playoffs possibly here, because both of these teams seem to be pretty strong right now. Alrighty, let's see how this game starts out here. Oh, Captain Canada pops one in early, 1-0 versus Evan the Milkman. Failed to deliver. That's all I gotta say. Goaltender versus a highly defensive player, no goals, so still a 1-0 score for Toronto. Oh, and a 2-0 lead for Toronto. That might be insurmountable at this point. Ock the shot him down. Oh no, Rob the Redline pulls one off here. Nice matchup. The coach must get an award for that one, because played him perfectly. Paul Krya, he's +4 because of the 4 players that came before him. So he's an 8 versus a 5. That's a 2-all game all of a sudden, coming right down to the last of it here. Oh, and we're going into overtime. How about that? No goal scored there. 2-all. This is going to be quite the finish here, because nobody knows what can happen with such a wide variety of players in the lineups here. And Steve Krya does not get his pluses in overtime, so Edmonton really hoping that they can pull one of their top players here to score against Toronto and take the lead in the standings right now. And what do we got? No goal. Fast Freddy cannot score against Math Confuse. 0-0 in the overtime here. There. No goal. King Richard comes up big against the goal hog. Wow, how many rounds are we going to go through overtime here? And look at this. Rob the Redline pulls it off again. His second goal of the game gives Edmonton the win. 3-2 in OT. That is just awesome for them. Toronto took 3 losses all of last year. So you feel a little humbled coming out of the door, being the champions of last year, and then just all of a sudden losing their first game against the team that they went to the finals against. And no bruises again, because there are no bruisers in the lineup here. Now we're on to Vancouver versus Toronto again. Here we go. Vancouver's lost every single game so far this season. Oh, hey, what the hell? So they're feeling pretty down right now. They're going to swap out Nate McKinnon for the Alien. Alien might have a little bit better chance of scoring against some of these Toronto players here. Toronto, fearing a bruiser, they are going to throw in Golden Oldie's immune to bruisers, but he's weak, but Vancouver's weak. Then they'll put in the Brain Leech. They'll put in Goal Hog because Captain Canada's just slightly better than him. They'll put in Fencer. They're just playing the risky part here. He bruises any bruiser he faces, and they might lose Greg here. So they're going to play the big risk here, hoping that the bruiser takes out some of their weaker players. This is a strategy to try and get your team a little bit stronger by losing against a bruiser. Wow. Sasquatch, 2 games in a row he scores. This might have not been the best move for Toronto because they're already down 1-0 against a horrible team. But Golden Oldie scores and does not get bruised because he's immune to bruisers. Wow, what a game, what a start. This is just drama unfolding here. Defense, Goal Hog cannot score because, or he can score because he doesn't have a D in his name. So that's another goal for Toronto, 2-1. And the save. Goaltenders facing off. Players with a, no, nothing happens there. So still 2-1 Toronto, but it's still anybody's game. The Alien versus Jack Actor, and Alien actually pops off a goal. A 4 versus a 3. Wow, unbelievable. Toronto kind of might have done a bad mistake here. Any forward or defense with the card modify scores against Brain Leech. Eager Beaver pops one in. Vancouver sneaks out the victory, 3-2 with 1 bruise. So Vancouver's happy to get that victory. So everybody has a victory so far this early in the season. And was there? No, Skeleton did not bruise the Golden Oldie. So no players end up getting replaced here. Toronto was really hoping to get rid of Greg on their team. He is such a weak link for their team. And Vancouver's quite happy with themselves. They managed to make the playoffs last year, and that's their goal again this year, is just to get in the fight, because you never know what happens when you get in there. Edmonton versus Calgary. Neither team has bruisers, and so each team is going to play their best possible lineup here. Yeah, there's their best lineup. Edmonton's going for it with theirs. And if Edmonton wins this game here, they'll have a nice, huge advantage over everybody, because that'll be their 4th win in 4 games, and will be double ahead of the next closest competitor. Steve Krya does not score. Paul Nabob scores 1-0 for Calgary. The Moose cannot score against King Richard. So 1-0 Calgary still. Fast Freddy pops up against No Goal Ned. This happened in the last game as well. Fast Freddy just has no answers for it. And Milkman comes up empty against Cujo. One nothing going late into the game. Mr. USSR scores 1. Ties up the game. 1 set of players left to go here. And Rob the Red Line fails to do it this time. Comes up clutch in the last game. Cannot do it this time. 1-0, or 1 more goal for Calgary. Win that game 2-1. And gives themselves a 2nd win on the season and shuts down Edmonton's winning ways. Next game on the schedule is Calgary versus Toronto. So Calgary's right back at it again. They're going to field the exact same lineup because, well, it worked for them this game. Toronto, they don't have to worry about a bruiser, so they're going to put in their best possible lineup right now. And their top D lineup here. Calgary could tie Edmonton. Well, both. This is for tie to first place in the league here. And Calgary did not have very many wins all of last year, since they missed the playoffs right off the bat. 0-0. Paul Nabob and Captain Canada. But Toronto is +1 with this card because Captain Canada failed to score. So Goal Hog scores against the Moose. And so that's a 1-0 lead for Toronto. And Ray Pork comes up big again. Gives him a little slice of back bacon. Pops it in top shelf. There you go. 1-1. Calgary's not rolling over. Oh, and a battle of the zeros. So no goal for either. Their modifiers cancel out. Still 1-1. Dr. Spruce. Players with an R in their name score against Spencer. So Dr. Spruce pops one in, gives the lead to Calgary with 1 player left to go. Here we go. And Octoshot fails to do it against Cujo. The goalie comes up huge. Calgary gets a bit of an upset victory here. And pulls right up top the leading standings here. And 2-1 over Toronto. Toronto takes a loss. 2nd loss. They're already almost tied with how many losses they had for the entire season last season. That's pretty humbling to see this early in the season. Our next game is going to be Vancouver versus Edmonton. Vancouver has to get it in gear because everybody's ahead of them in the win category, and if they get too much further behind, they are going to find themselves out of the playoffs before the playoffs even begin. Vancouver's going to field their top lineup, what they feel is their top lineup, hoping that they can knock out one of Edmonton's top players. And Edmonton's going to field their top guys again. They're feeling it. They really want to put everybody underneath their foot right now. And 1, 2, 3 forwards, 2 defense. There's their 6 players in their lineup. With this one, Edmonton could pull up to 4 wins and be a couple wins up on Toronto and Vancouver. And Calgary will just be 1 win behind. But Vancouver hopes to win this one so that they can get out of dead last position. And here we go. Well, Edmonton lost Steve Kreier. He scores, but they don't mind too much. He was one of their weakest players on their team. The Alien versus King Richard cannot get it done, so it still remains 1-0 for Edmonton. Defense. No player with a D in their name can score, but they have the same number, so neither player scores anyways, so it's still 1-0 for Edmonton. And the save comes up big once again. This guy is just a monster. He's just always coming in clutch. 1-0, getting down to the nitty-gritty, and that spells the end of the game right there. There's no coming back from that one. 2-1 for Edmonton, or 2-0 Edmonton, and what is the final score? It's going to be 3-0 for Edmonton, and Vancouver goes down in flames yet again. The E-Floggers just beat them down. Poor Vancouver. They just cannot seem to get anything going, and their lineup is just so weak right now. And next game is Edmonton versus Toronto. So Toronto has a chance to start making a little bit of amends, but let's get replacement player here for Steve Kreier. They replaced a 4 with a 2. One of the first times Edmonton's made a bad draft, so that's kind of bad on them. They're going to play their best lineup, but they're going to take Dull Blade out of the lineup and put him, Dennis Potts them. And Toronto is only a 500 team right now, so they really got to start piling on some wins here so that they can get back into the playoff picture. A win here would almost guarantee Edmonton to go to the playoffs, because they're just steamrolling everybody right now. Fensar. Players with an R in their name score against Fencer. 1-0. Fast Freddy just blows one past the Fencer. Great start to the game for Edmonton. And nothing happens there. The boys cancel out and no goals scored. Rob the Redline takes advantage of Jack Actor for the 3rd time this year. He has his number. 2-0 for Edmonton over Toronto right now. But Toronto's making a comeback. 2-1. Captain Canada comes in clutch. No goals. 2-1. Going into the final player. And Octashot 2-2 ties the game up late. 2-2 going into overtime. So the team's got to shuffle up and see who can come out the hero here. 2-2. Edmonton would love to grab this victory to give them 5 already on the season. 5 wins out of 6 games would be a phenomenal start to the season. And here we go. No, Octashot gets the goal for Toronto. The victory goes to Toronto. They're quite happy now. 3-2 in overtime. And that's a loss, slowing down Edmonton right now. So the last game of the first half of the season is Vancouver versus Calgary. This is the bottom 2 teams technically right now, and Vancouver has only 1 singular win on the season. If they don't get this win, they might almost be out of the playoffs, unless they run the table at the second half of the season, but it's looking very, very, very bad for them right now. Calgary sees that they have 1 bruiser in the lineup, but their weakest players are so weak that if they put them in, they might lose. Oh, they're going to risk playing their worst lineup. They're going to save all their best players. So 3 weak forwards, 1 weak defenseman, their weakest goalie, and they have to play one of their good defensemen. So Calgary's going to throw this game hoping to lose a bad player, but to get him replaced with a better player. Sometimes these strategies work. Sometimes these strategies just backfire so brutally. Let's see what happens here. Last game of the first half of the season. Stones Lanny cannot do anything against the save. 0-0. Defense against Rich Stutter. No player with a D in their name can score. So that's a 1-0 for Vancouver. Oh, look at this. Sasquatch. 3rd goal of the season already for Sasquatch. What an unexpected turn of events for Sasquatch. Wow, no wonder he's a franchise player. Unbelievable. I don't think he scored that many goals in his whole entire minor career. Igor Beaver. No, that's a goal for Calgary. They close up the gap 2-1. No goal Ned gives up a goal and gets bruised. Calgary's kind of happy with this turn of events here. They're going to take the loss, but they lost no goal Ned, so they might be able to get a really good replacement player for him. And it's a 4-1 victory for Vancouver with 1 bruise. Wow, that's just stupendous for them. 4-1 for Vancouver. Gets in the game with a win. And Calgary gets to replace no goal Ned, who's a 0, but he's pretty good defensively. And they replace him with a 3, but they got offense. No card with a 0, an O or a 0 can score against offense. So he's a great defensive forward. So that's a good benefit for Calgary coming into the playoff picture here. It's still anybody's game in the first half of the season here because everybody's within 2 wins of each other. So we're going to wrap that up there for part 1 of season number 2, and we'll come back with part 2 of the regular season to wrap up the last 6 games for each team.